The process of life, it comes down to finding the endowments of within yourself. To that of being able to go ahead and conceptualize what it is to preview how simple life is, how ultimately it's all about your empowerment to something else. Because then, once you give that thing an empowerment, you go ahead and give it an able to take the unconditional love in life, because the only thing that cannot be created and only learned and experienced and action and all the encompassing of the actuality of it is that of learning unconditional love. um, Basically it's learning self-respect. It comes down to that of, if you can't self-respect yourself and being able to be happy and enjoy yourself, you're never going to ever move on, because life is saying to you that it wants you to appreciate itself, because there is this point to where life wants everything to wake up. It wants everything to wake up because there's something that it wants more of. And the only way it can do that is if everything, literally, actualization of actually and the absolute of it, of say yes, of what is power, what they represent. And in a sense, everybody's telling themselves a story of here, and you have to reclaim your parts. You have to be able to find what part made what and who made what, because you're not making something. Nothing ever comes out of from nowhere. It always exists, and nothing ever disappears. It always exists. It's one of the 4 universal laws that basically contraspection of all creation, of every single thing, even these human laws in a sense. Because there's this point to where there are those that don't know the difference of what they do, to upon those that do know the difference, and that of what is a fool. Of in a sense of the saying of what is the saying. It's a little backwards for those, yet this is what the saying is. Who is the fool? The fool is the one that knows how to do it and how to control it. And yet when they go ahead and they allow somebody into that existence, regardless of if they can walk through the door in the same store and like kind, you are then that of able to teach them something, and they can be the student, yet vice versa. Yet the moment being is that, well, the fool that knows how to control someone, that welcome the other one into their life, as in the simpleness of being a student as to the teacher, that then they go and embody and take the fullness and the responsibility and that of the parenthood, in that of what it means to control someone, in that of an absolute, as that of you experiencing how to be that of another, here and there, in multiple forms. And yet it's not about you making. So once you take that on, what you're doing essentially is the ultimation of not creating another one of you, because that is the practicality of the difference of a concept upon another concept coming together and making another concept. So that is 1 + 1 is equals 3, only when there is creation in of itself, not adding and counting of what it can be, and the different levels in the story of it, in the describing and the actions of it, of that of yet. So there's a simple thing in life. Like, life is so simple. There are those, yes, that don't get it, yet they do the same thing. And what kind of pipeline do you pay into that you give your energy in creating? And yet, well, when you go ahead and confirm whatever it is as what meaning you bring, and then you're able to echo that out by philosophy of words in thought and that of actions, then that is the difference. And then that is when there's no karma for you anymore in that retrospect. In all absolute of what it is, you are not here to create something like kind. You're only able to communicate through that of like kind, yet you are that of embodying. Do you want to go forth and be the thing that something created and then become something that can create in like kind? And in that embody what it means to be God, in that of welcoming God to your life in such a degree. You know, everybody comes to a different point in understanding what God can be to them and how they can contraspection of the words to that of what is God. And yet, in all of itself, everybody is speaking the same story with different tongue, or in different tongue, in religion, and that of going to someone, and in a sense of an archetype of this scenario of what it is that of religion. You go to somewhere. You go upon the journey, and you see the the different destinations upon you as water and liquid in a sense, and yet you are a destination, and you're learning how to be a destination here. You're learning how to communicate what you already innately know here now, and yet through that of religion, because even a habit is religion. A hobbit, sure, they're religion upon that of a lifestyle, and that of all the fun stuff, upon that of what it means to that of what it is of embodying and being religion, to that of you're not meant to be here to be religion in a sense. You're not meant to do that. That is a stepping stone until you can move on, until that of to that of religion is step one of an archetype, of being able to understand what are archetypes, what is an empowerment of an archetype, and what kind of control and influence something can have over your life, and that of being able to at the same time bring camaraderie, bring things together as that of a meaning place and that of a destination upon itself, to where what is the next step? It's spirituality, and that would be then you taking the step to be the philosopher, upon that of being the thing that is embarking on being a religious / a welcoming destination of that of an archetype upon yourself, and a dichotomy, and that of all fullness of what it is of seeing how you can then embrace having a conversation and a discussion with what is the interpretations of your absoluteness and your innate place in life of what you already internally and intuitionally know, upon that of being able to correspond what is what you see, and then you're going and doing that, and then in a sense, so now you're taking the steps, you're going back and forth. You will always go back and forth. You breathe in and you breathe out, and yet you go forth and you go forward in that of still breathing in and out, and yet you will always use religion in the same sense of when you will always use spirituality, of that of seeing how you will go ahead and take the empathy, and then and that of the moment of what it is to go ahead and say, what is a thought, and how can I think it, and why does it exist in here? And then it only exists, the thought only really exists in here, and then it becomes, the form changes into words, and then yet it still changes. So the theme and the archetype, it was always there in a sense, and that is what spirituality is. It is that of the so religion is godhood and physicality. Spirituality is that of godhood in thoughts. And then, what is another step upon that of simultaneously, or at least I could say that I'm coining that phrase, and yet everyone is able to profit off of what is the actuality of teamwork and all that kind of stuff. And yet when you actually have that of simultaneously, it is that of, well, you will say that you're happy and you'll be happy for every moment. In that, when that one word, you're having every single conversation of that one word still have an archetype and a dichotomy, and that of a point and that of a reference of a memory, just like in physicality with religion of having to go somewhere to a destination, and as if you were using a physical thing in that representation of a memory in of itself, such as a photo. And yet then you have a thought of it. You can use your thoughts. It is always there and you can always remember it. Now, do you always remember it the same way, or are you going to look at it differently every time? Because, well, if you ultimately start from beginning, which is that of 0, and that of the first page, which is the first letter, always, because every day is different, every time you look at something different, every time you breathe, it's different, and yet you are assuming that it is the same thing, and yet you are different. And that is the difference. It is always the same thing because it exists what it is. And that is the point. When you let go of having to control something and changing what it is and denying what it is, when you are ultimately having an experience that you are semi-denying who you are in a sense, and innately you know who you are, and yet. So that's why you accept things, because everything exists. It's one of the 4 universal laws that are the absolute in all bases of life. In that of what it means to be able to see yourself, in what it means to have that of the ability of self-respect. Because it is that of the dichotomy of self-respect that you can go to the interpretation of never having to go ahead and actually do something. Because in all actuality, you do never have to do something. You can stop reacting. Oh, are you hungry? Oh, well, then don't eat. I mean, oh, you can eat, yet the point is, if you don't want to, well, all you have to do is deal with the reoccurring means of what is being that of accepting living, and that of life, and how powerful life is upon that of death, is that of it's just a transferring of energy, just like the dichotomy and the archetype of that of religion and spirituality to simultaneously. Yet is that the next thing, or is it just one step upon that of what is a wholeness? And yet, let's all breathe and say we love ourselves to that of, in one moment life changes, and yet life is always starting from 0 point. Because it is only being itself, and it is its own empowerment. It is a destination that is presenting itself as being where the journey can become a reality upon that of adding to the different destinations without ever taking from this destination to add to that destination. All that is that of life, and you are in existence because life wants to exist as life fully, and the only way that life can exist fully is that of existing only what it is, never taking a part in the interactions other than the actualizations of the absolute of what is life, to that of it has to have something else that exists. That's where you come in. You exist, and yet there are different archetypes of what is the omniverse, to the universe, to the multiverse. Well, the omniverse is the object verse. The object came first because there is this empowerment. Then it became the universe because you're experiencing it in that way as the user, because something has to use it to be fully experienced of it. And then that of what is the multiple different uses of the same thing, showing itself in different forms in different places, and as if it was a different copy, yet it's the same thing, because simultaneously, simply, there's only one thing happening at the same time. So you can go ahead and breathe and live your life as long as you are able to bring a meaning of self-respect to the table. You will always be the table of the able, of what it means to actually love, what it means to be a student, teaching the teachers upon that of the seasons, always changing but staying the same.